Tonight, Victoria's flood crisis, heartache and dramatic rescues as Melbourne homes and streets go underwater. Special coverage. Hundreds of homes swamped and towns left isolated. The latest live from the flood zones. Tears of joy for touching reunions in the chaos.
Come on, Dom. You've got him.
Also, Brett Ratton sacked in an AFL bombshell as Alistair Clarkson reveals his next move. And a major boost for new parents. Details ahead.
Live from Melbourne, 7 News with Peter Mitchell starts now.
Good evening. Victoria's flood emergency has hit hard, with hundreds of homes underwater and more under threat. Tonight, the situation is still unfolding, with streets flooded in Maribyrnong and towns cut off. We'll have live updates from the flood zone soon as the state braces for more rain to come.
Creeping up like a thief in the night, the water caught so many by surprise. Most were asleep, woken by alert text messages before dawn.
And it's just getting higher and higher. Cars are getting submerged underwater.
Where roads had been, there were rivers. The current strong enough to tear pontoons from their moorings.
Oh, it's gone through, it's gone through.
Shit.
For residents in Maribyrnong, there was as little as 10 minutes warning.
And when we woke up, there's all flood water in the house, up to my knees.
It happened so fast, so many were trapped at home, nowhere to go. For this family, the only way was up, stuck on a roof, waiting for help.
It crept up from the street into the house, and so we had to get to a higher place.
This family got out with the clothes on their backs, the ambulance waiting. State Emergency Service rescue boats could barely keep up. Before noon, they'd responded to 200 calls for help, a big ask from an army of little boats.
Yeah, they're doing 3 trips.
Okay. The true number of rescues, impossible to say. So many of them were neighbours rescuing neighbours. Here, a team of tradies comes to the aid of a confused elderly driver trying to find a way out. There wasn't much time for persuasion, but they managed it. This, one of many rescues they performed today.
Just help someone. You can't leave someone stranded. You do it normally. You just go.
We can walk through it. Some people can't. They're not as legs aren't as strong. Help them out.
More than 50 ended up at an evacuation centre with whatever they could carry.
Maggie.
We got up about 4 because the neighbours alerted us that it's going to flood, so...
What'd you do? Grab the cat?
Grab the cat, exactly. Grab the cat, grab some bags of stuff and that's it.
For those who need a bed, the state government will likely activate the COVID quarantine facility.
We think there's every chance that we'll need to house people at that Mickleham facility.
Financial help is coming too. $560 for adults, $280 for kids, up to $2,000 per family.
Some 1,500 Victorians who have applied for emergency payments.
More than 2,000 emergency service people have been deployed. They could be needed well into next week, possibly longer.
There's every chance that we'll have another low pressure system, another weather event later next week. So please, let's learn from this.
At least 100 homes in the one suburb have water inside them. Riverside life, more luxury than risk until now. At the Angler's Tavern, what should be Friday afternoon drinks washed away, as bad as, if not worse than, the 1993 floods.
We anticipated waist high at the worst, and as you can see, it's up to the second story already, so it's big.
The SES bashed down a door to rescue this woman in Maribyrnong, one cat in her bag, the other carried by a lifesaver.
We've rescued cats, dogs, chickens.
Strangers also coming to help.
He's dropping off sandbags for us. It's a community. It's just, yeah, who would have thought?
Back at the evacuation centre, Coles donated vital supplies.
Water, bananas, apples, some snacks, some dog food.
And where did all this come from?
Just from our local store in Braybrook.
Acts of kindness, great and small.
I gave some dude my gumboots,
so at least they can get around their house.
He might need them a while. Blake Johnson, 7 News.
The water is starting to recede in Maribyrnong tonight. Christy Cooper has the latest from the flood zone. And Christy, it has started, but it is going to take some time.
It will, Mitch. Here in Maribyrnong, the water peaked at around 4.5 metres. It has since dropped by almost a whole metre. But as you can see, the streets are still inundated. Some residents have already returned home to assess the damage and begin the massive task of cleaning up, but others won't be able to get back in until tomorrow. But also a warning that there could be more of this to come. Authorities say they're expecting more rain in the next few weeks. And with our rivers and catchments already full, there is nowhere for that rain to go. Scenes like this could very well be repeated, Mitch.
Christy Cooper at Maribyrnong, thank you. The floods came in hard and fast, many caught out by the speed of the rising water. Paul Dowsley is also in Maribyrnong tonight. Paul, it's been a day of heartache, rescues and reunions.
Mitch, this was just so unexpected for so many around these streets of Maribyrnong, because they went to bed based on what they were seeing on the Victorian Emergency app, thinking they would be safe when they woke up. But in houses like this one, John and Wendy's, this is now what they have in the spare room, for instance. This is the mucky silt that is now on the floor that they need to start cleaning up. And I'll speak with John here in the kitchen and I'll show you what they did to try to prepare for this. John saw it coming and he's put the fridge up on bricks there just to try to protect this and some of the furniture. John and Wendy here now started the clean-up. John, when you walk into this, and you can see maybe on the water came up to about here, I think, yeah?
That's correct. We had 300 mil in the house.
And where do you begin, you and Wendy, to even start cleaning this up?
Well, it's our first experience of having it in the house. So basically just get the floors clean and see what furniture swells up later on with the water in it. Then replace as required. But
this is a big job ahead.
A lot of elbow grease.
Yeah, after a day of tears and reunions. Isolated in suburbia, families trapped inside their homes. A young girl clings to her rescuer as she's carried through the floodwaters. She waits for her father on the next boat coming in. Barefoot and carrying a plastic bag of belongings, he rushes to be reunited with her. The Maribyrnong floodwaters also separated families from their pets. Antoinette waited anxiously at the nearby relief centre for news on her dog Rocco.
Come on, darling.
You've got him.
Oh my God. Oh, I'm so sorry for leaving you there.
The staffy, among other pets, picked up from their inundated homes.
I'd rather save a dog than myself.
John Boehm kayaked down his street to assess just how much water went through the family home.
It's surreal, yeah, it's like post-apocalyptic.
Filming his recent renovation in ruins. His wife Carolyn coming to terms with the labour of love that's been lost.
Oh, you got me. We only just sorry. Yeah, that was hard to see because I hadn't seen it. I didn't go inside. It's gut wrenching. Like I don't even know what to say.
The couple says they weren't given enough warning. They needed to get out so fast.
They only were asking for up to house number 9 to evacuate. We're number 23. So yeah, we didn't really. We knew we needed to start prepare, but we weren't panicking at that point.
Following the text message alerts, fellow neighbours also thought they were out of the path of the rapidly rising waters until they were lapping at their doorsteps.
We thought we were safe, and then and probably within about 10 minutes the whole place was inundated.
Even an SES volunteer out helping the locals was caught off guard.
We weren't expecting this. So we're actually coming out to do door knocking and I go, no, that's my house.
But living in the area for 30 years, Jane Clifton was prepared for what the Maribyrnong River unleashed.
And I knew it was coming and I slept in my clothes and I had a plan ready. So we got some sleep. At least it didn't happen in the middle of the night.
Unlike many others, this car got out with minutes to spare. And when the car comes out and you open the door, this is what you're free to do. separated from their homes but brought together with their neighbours.
They're just doing their little bit to help.
Paul Dowsley, 7 News.
There is some good news coming in as the flood threat eases at Heidelberg. Nick McCallum has the latest from the State Control Centre. And Nick, the Yarra has been causing problems all day.
It certainly has. The Yarra burst its banks at Heidelberg mid-morning, inundating footy fields, golf courses, construction sites for the North East Link. It peaked at around 4 o'clock this afternoon at 8.5 metres. That's just below the major flooding level. Now, no buildings, fortunately, were flooded, but the SES were furious at local motorists. Several of them actually saw road closed signs at flooded Bulleen Road, but went around those signs and into the floodwaters. Half a dozen had to be rescued, tying up valuable resources. Now, the floodwater at Heidelberg should recede pretty quickly, but officials expect they'll face moderate flooding at the upper edges of the Yarra, towns like Coldstream and Yarra Glen, for at least the next 5 days. Peter?
Nick McCallum at the State Control Centre, thank you. There was another threat at Werribee where authorities issued an evacuation order. Jodie Lee is on the banks of the river there, and Jodie, some good news there as well.
That's right, Mitch. Residents here in Werribee breathed a collective sigh of relief when the situation here was downgraded to a moderate flood warning. The Werribee River peaked much earlier than expected, around 2 o'clock this afternoon, reaching a height of 8.5 metres. And as you can see behind me, it's only started to recede ever so slightly, still swollen with the water moving very rapidly. There was minor flooding here at the Cottrell Road Ford and at the Werribee Zoo, but thankfully we're told animals did not require evacuation. As for residents, they were told earlier today to evacuate. That was some 70 homes, but later today they were revisited by emergency services who told them that they were now able to stay. It was safe to do so. Certainly a huge relief for them after a very uncertain day. Further west from here in Maud, there was also a very dramatic rescue of a man and woman in their 60s. They, what looked like, attempted to drive through floodwaters and required an evacuation from their truck. That was performed by Victoria Police, who managed to winch them to safety from the air. Incredibly, both that man and woman escaped serious injury. A reminder for us all never to attempt to drive through floodwaters. Mitch?
Remarkable pictures. Jodie Lee at Werribee, thank you. The SES has been stretched to the limit by this crisis, as we've seen, with volunteers claiming the organisation is critically underfunded. Crews in Maribyrnong were equipped with just 2 utes and a single boat as homes were swamped.
All alone, an elderly man struggled through the gushing water. Hero tradies were there to help him. Their third rescue for the day, the SES nowhere in sight.
SES has always been the most underfunded of all the emergency services.
I want to carry her to here.
Now she's coming. Learning the man's wife was still at home, too terrified to flee. The Good Samaritans risked their own lives to rescue her. Together, they carry her to safety.
It's shameful that the people of the city of Maribyrnong are not serviced well.
Faye Bendrups is the head of the SES Volunteers Association. She says rescues like this are a sign the SES is being starved of resources. The Maribyrnong unit has no headquarters and no rescue trucks. Now it's been left upriver without the resources volunteers desperately need.
And it's also lost one of its rescue boats. Previously it had 2 trucks, 2 4-wheel drives and 2 rescue boats. It's down to 2 utes and 1 rescue boat.
The SES chief has conceded emergency services are stretched to their limits, but denies the organisation is critically underfunded.
We still have sufficient resources to be able to respond to the calls we're receiving throughout the day.
Instead, claiming the biggest problem for responders is people driving through floodwaters, then needing multiple air, road and boat crews to be rescued.
I'm not aware of anybody that has not been able to be provided assistance in that area.
Jodie Lee, 7 News.
The floods have completely cut off some Victorian towns, leaving locals stranded for a second day. Tegan Doling is in Benalla this evening. Tegan, it's an anxious wait for residents with no relief in sight.
A very nervous wait, Mitch, because a lot of these residents are still under an evacuation order, meaning that their houses could be inundated at any time. Lake Benalla right here behind me, that's still rising, meaning that the peak is expected in the next couple of hours. The Benalla township underwater, the Main Street bridge cut off.
It's normally way down below this, so the footy ground's flooded, showgrounds, and all the rivers and tributaries further up.
I remember a few years ago there was barely any water because of the drought, and now it's the complete opposite of that.
The banks of Lake Benalla burst early, causing an emergency evacuation.
We've seen a peak similar to what we've seen in 1993, where around 50 properties have now been inundated by floodwaters.
Streets, yards, sheds and homes inundated.
As the water level rose up, it actually started flowing into the cellar. I thought, we need to do something about this, so went and got some sandbags and ended up having to strip down to the starkers and had to go for a bit of a swim.
Is there a point where you go, right, we have to leave now?
Yeah, when it comes into the house, you've got to get out. You've got to get out, you've got to shake your dogs out, you've got to shake your chooks out, and you just got to get out and go.
The only way out to dry land now is by rescue boat.
I spent pretty much all night going in and out and watching the water come up.
Flood levels aren't expected to drop anytime soon as residents do what they can to pass the time.
Just going for a fish, water's up, so...
What is this area?
This is the Royal Car Park, so yeah.
The pub car park?
Yep.
Couldn't imagine there's too much fish in here.
Nah.
In nearby Mangalore, the water's so high, this rescue horse is struggling to keep its head above water. At Seymour, there was record flooding overnight too, peaking at around 3 a.m. at 8.26 metres.
We've had about 50 people at the relief centre there overnight, but around 300 properties that have been impacted by floodwater.
Oh, it's not much you can do. It's just come that quick that we're in the shit.
Some drivers have heeded the advice as Victoria's northeast is tonight again on high alert, with major flood warnings in place for the Goulburn River, set to cause flooding in Murchison and Shepparton from tonight.
We're going to see the Goulburn River and its tributaries, being the Broken River and Seven and Castles Creek, get to 12 metres by Tuesday afternoon. That means 4,000 plus properties that will either be surrounded by floodwaters, some of those being inundated above floor.
Tegan Doling, 7 News.
In Rochester, the prediction is that 1,000 properties could be impacted as the Campaspe River rises to levels not seen in over a decade.
A small town split in two as the Campaspe River swells to record levels.
It's out of the bank, it's backing up drains, it's cut roads.
Last night, an emergency alert was sent out to the entire town to evacuate, with 1,000 properties in Rochester predicted to be impacted by the fast-rising floodwaters.
Some of those will see above floor flooding, others will be isolated for the period of 2 to 3 days.
But despite the warnings, some have decided to stay and fight.
A bit nervous now, but yeah, we're going to stay through it, try and save the pub.
It's unclear when the town's businesses, offices and even schools will be able to reopen.
Probably 70% of our families, their home and their place of learning is impacted. That's huge. And I can honestly say, I don't know when we'll open.
We cannot get to everyone in the town that's calling us for a flood assistance.
Kim Billman's Jack Russell is suffering a fatal brain bleed. Today the local vet carried him across town by boat so Ms Billman could say a final goodbye.
I can spend a couple of hours with him to say goodbye. It's just beautiful.
This is what the Campaspe River looked like yesterday. Today the campsite underwater, an eerie feeling. This is one of the main streets in Rochester, and as you can see a bit further down, it's already underwater, but locals fear by tomorrow it will be much higher. The attention will then turn to towns further north this weekend as emergency crews warn residents to prepare for what's still to come.
That floodwater then progresses down the Campaspe to Echuca, where we're also likely to see impacts, if not the same as January 2011, a little bit higher.
Cassie Zervos, 7 News.
And Jane Bunn joins us now. Jane, will there be more rain in Melbourne over the weekend?
Well, Mitch, there is some wet weather, yes, but like we saw today, it's hit and miss showers. Instead of the widespread 40 to 70 millimetres we saw over the past 2 days, it's just 2 or 3 millimetres at best. That doesn't affect the flood situation. However, there's more widespread rain on the horizon. It is due next week. Our climate drivers are set up to keep bringing big rain systems each week for the rest of the year and into next year. The only uncertainty is where does each one move. Now, if it's further north, like projections for next week, then Queensland cops it. If it's south, like this recent one, then Victoria's in the danger zone. I'll have the latest guidance on this soon, Mitch.
OK, Jane, we'll see you then. Thank you. The Saints have rocked the AFL with the bombshell sacking of coach Brett Ratten. The club explains why, next on 7 News. Also, Brittany Higgins delivers a message to the man accused of raping her in Parliament House. A heart-in-mouth emergency landing at Essendon. And later, how dementia could be spotted 9 years early. St Kilda has sacked their coach Brett Ratten in a football bombshell. The 51-year-old was re-signed less than 3 months ago, the club now admitting that was a mistake.
The Football Review is in. The president who founded Seek.com putting Brett Ratten out of a job.
We don't yet have the winning culture or ruthless commitment to football excellence that we need. And it became clear that we needed to have a new senior coach with a new style of leadership.
The Saints gave Ratten a 2-year contract extension just 98 days ago.
The centrepiece in our family in Rats has signed a 2-year extension with the club.
If we as a club have regrets about that in hindsight, we cannot let those regrets get in the way of making the right decision for the future.
The president revealing even when they granted the extension, St Kilda contemplated a potential payout if things went off track.
If we ended up at the end of the year making a different decision, we'll cop the payout, and I think that was a humane decision.
Ratten watched the draft prospects on Sunday with no inkling he was about to be sacked.
Brett was pretty blindsided.
CEO Simon Lethlean dropped the bombshell Sunday night, calling Ratten. Ratten spent more than 7 hours with Bassett, pleading his case at the president's Bayside home. St Kilda's board meeting last night, where Ratten waited outside the room to learn his fate.
We've given him complete honesty through the course of the week that we felt the decision was likely to go against him, but we wanted to give him every chance to convince us we were wrong.
He was very disappointed. He wants to coach the club, and that opportunity's been taken away from him.
St Kilda plan to announce a coach within weeks.
We will act quickly and decisively.
Ross Lyon, the early favourite, the former Saints coach, prepared to take their call. Tom Brown, 7 News.
Brittany Higgins has returned to the witness box for an emotional and heated day in court. The former Liberal staffer pointed and spoke directly at the man accused of raping her at Parliament House.
Returning to court for the first time this week, today Brittany Higgins let loose, pointing directly at the accused. Nothing was fine. Nothing was fine after what you did to me. Nothing. Rejecting claims she made up the sexual assault to save her job. I'm not a monster. I would never do that. Earlier, her mother told the jury how much her daughter had changed. She became almost unfamiliar in her character. She was not the same person. The court also heard from her accused rapist for the first time. Bruce Lerriman telling police in a recorded interview it simply didn't happen. Asked if he was intimate with Higgins earlier in the night, yeah, it's possible, I don't remember. Would I have acted anything beyond flirtatious? Absolutely not, because I was in a relationship. In 2019, then Minister Linda Reynolds fired Lerriman for serious misconduct after the alleged incident, telling him in a letter, "It has been brought to my attention that you were dishonest about the reasons for entering my office." But in 2021, Lerriman told police he didn't drink at work that night and wouldn't dream of going into the minister's office at all. Nicola Anderson and Mark Fairweather were security guards on duty at Parliament House. Mark told me something strange was happening. Mr. Lerriman had left 20 minutes after I let him into the suite. He seemed to be in a hurry to get out. Later, finding Higgins lying on her back, completely naked on that lounge. The witness list has been pared back significantly, and the prosecution is now expected to finish its case early next week, cutting the length of the trial in half, from 6 weeks to just 3. The trial continues on Monday. Rob Scott, 7 News.
A pilot has made an emergency landing at Essendon Fields Airport after the nose wheel malfunctioned. Flames were coming from the aircraft's engine as it touched down on the runway. Emergency services were waiting on the tarmac, but thankfully they were not needed. Magpie star Jordan De Goey is back in Bali. Abby Gelmi, this is just months after he was caught up in trouble.
Well, Midge, coming up in sport, we see new pictures of just what he's getting up to. Also, hear exclusively from Alistair Clarkson as he heads out of the country with an investigation hanging over his head. What made Rory Lobb fall in love with the Western Bulldogs and how the rain will impact the Caulfield Cup tomorrow. It's going to be a heavy 10, Midge.
Yes, it will. Thank you very much indeed, Abby. We'll see you a bit later. Coming up next, a Melbourne grandmother's ordeal. The 78-year-old was bashed at a church and left for dead. She tells how her life has been shattered. Also, children in the firing line as Russia launches new attacks. The miracle Victorian man who fell 10,000 feet, now on an inspirational mission to make a difference. And a piece of sporting history set to sell for $5 million. A grandmother has revealed how her life has been shattered by an attack outside her church. Penelope Katsavos suffered horrific injuries when she was bashed by a complete stranger.
Penelope Katsavos once enjoyed caring for her husband, cooking for her grandchildren and volunteering at her church. But Amrik Roy's evil actions have left the 78-year-old a shadow of her former self. The schizophrenic student was in a state of psychosis when he attacked Mrs. Katsavos in South Yarra last year. The 27-year-old bashing and robbing the grandmother as she opened her church. Today, the thug pleaded guilty as his victim told a court he'd also stolen her independence. I can no longer cook all the traditional Greek foods my family enjoy without assistance. I can't shop for myself. I can no longer volunteer at my church. The most heartbreaking impact is that my beloved husband of 60 years, Thomas, has had to go into a care home because I can no longer care for him. Amrik Roy is currently in protective custody after being attacked by other prisoners. Today, his legal team requested his name was withheld from media reports, but the judge refused. Roy will learn how long he'll spend in jail next Friday. Mrs. Katsavos says no sentence will change the life sentence she's now facing. Estelle Greepink, 7 News.
The Federal Treasurer has warned the global economy is treading what he describes as an increasingly narrow and perilous path. Jim Chalmers issued the warning after meetings in Washington with central banks and finance experts.
The number one enemy when it comes to the global economy is inflation.
Inflation in the US has jumped to a 40-year high, up 8.2%, heightening fears of a recession. Children are tonight among the victims killed by Russian attacks in Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky says they're lacking essentials for air defence. 14 NATO allies and Finland today vowing to boost that. Vladimir Putin has sat down for talks with the Turkish president to discuss energy supplies, which the West accuses Putin of weaponising. And the ball used by Diego Maradona to score the infamous Hand of God goal is going to auction. The football legend punched the ball into the goal during Argentina's World Cup quarter-final win against England in 1986. The ball is being sold by the Tunisian referee who allowed the illegal handball. It's expected to fetch more than $5 million. A grandfather has made an astonishing recovery after surviving a skydiving accident. The 55-year-old is not only up and walking again, he's going one step further.
It was a tandem jump to celebrate his daughter's birthday, but Christopher Rantall's first skydive turned to tragedy.
How do I walk now? It's a miracle.
Chris and his instructor Aaron Topfer fell 10,000 feet. Both their main and reserve parachutes failed. They hit a Torquay paddock at 200 kilometres an hour, Aaron heroically cushioning Chris's fall. The instructor later died and Chris was critically injured.
There was 3 fractured vertebrae, 2 fractured ribs, my left kidney, my spleen, my lung, my heart.
When 7 News met the brave grandfather a year ago, he could stand but could barely walk. Now he's not only walking, he's running for a cause.
I reckon I can whack out 5Ks.
After intense physio and training, Chris will take part in the Run for Reef race this Sunday. The keen scuba diver is back in the water. Now he wants to help Australia's Great Barrier Reef.
I'm really confident that I'll be able to get through it without any real hassles.
The survivor says he will be spurred on by memories.
Aaron and his family will be in my thoughts.
Chris hasn't ruled out skydiving again, but only if his wife is willing. Jackie Quist, 7 News.
Good luck to you, Chris. New parents are set for a boost with good news when it comes to paid leave. Details are next on 7 News. Also exclusive, new advice on the Optus hacking scandal straight from the telco's embattled CEO. And after sport, the discovery making it easier to deal with dementia. Maribyrnong residents face a long weekend ahead as the floodwaters slowly recede. Christy Cooper is there this evening. Christy, hundreds of people are waiting to see what damage the flood has done to their homes.
They are, Mitch, and many of them are getting into their homes for the first time as we speak. We're standing here on Navigator Street. When we crossed to you just half an hour ago, this whole road was inundated with water. Since then, it has receded enough that we are now standing halfway down the street and I'm not even getting my feet wet. So many locals have been following the receding lines as they change. One of them let me have a look inside their home, and I tell you what, the damage bill is going to be gigantic, because even those who live on the top levels or second levels, their cars have been destroyed, and you can see behind me there are still cars that are submerged. They are not going to start when their owners come back and try to turn them on. The concern now turns to the next few weeks with more rain forecast. The Maribyrnong River is already full, as are all of our other rivers and catchments in Victoria. There is huge concern. There's nowhere for that water to go, and scenes like this could be repeated, Mitch.
Christy Cooper at the flood scene, thank you. Optus customers have been told they won't need new passports after all. The federal government has blocked ID proof for affected passports, meaning they're not needed for taking out a loan, but will still be valid for travel.
Optus might have put at risk the private data of 10 million customers, but its boss says at least their holidays are safe.
No Australian who's had a passport number exposed needs to replace their passport, and that's great news for everyone who's planning to travel.
With updated advice from the federal government, you don't need to replace your passport if they were compromised as part of the Optus breach. For those still wanting to change at a cost of $193.
Will you pay for that process?
We will, but there is no need for anybody to replace a passport.
Optus now doing all it can to stem the bleeding from a corporate disaster that, when it comes to retaining, let alone winning new customers, still has a long way to play out. A message on the telco's website reveals its challenge, but Optus is accused of putting up barriers like cancellation fees.
There are very few customers who are actually locked in.
Chris Marr, 7 News.
New parents will be given more time to spend with their newborns as part of a major plan from the federal government. The Prime Minister is pushing for 26 weeks of leave to be made available for mums and dads to share when their children arrive.
Babies are often at the centre of election campaigns, like little Leo here.
Hours old.
Now Anthony Albanese's government is about to put their parental care at the centre of policy.
Paid parental leave is something that Labor
has championed.
Gradually increasing the current 18 weeks paid parental leave by 2 weeks each year to 26 weeks by 2026.
Ideally, I'd love to see the 26 weeks come in before then.
A reform backed at the government's recent Jobs and Skills Summit, $812.60 a week, currently totalling $14,600 for 18 weeks, rising to above $21,000 for 26 weeks for those with combined incomes below $156,000.
This will be welcomed wholeheartedly by Australian families.
This really does allow families to even the playing field, give dad a seat at the child raising table and give mum at the seat at the table of advancing her career.
7 News understands Anthony Albanese will announce the policy change in his address to the New South Wales State Labor Conference tomorrow, a forum he's attended for many years from his time as a young left-wing firebrand, returning tomorrow as Prime Minister in an event some within government are only half-jokingly referring to as his coronation. Labor's unofficial pro-republic king. Mark Riley, 7 News.
Sport is next with Abby Gelmy, and Abby, Alistair Clarkson has revealed his next move.
Well, Mitch, we've spoken exclusively to the North Melbourne coach. We'll hear from Clarkson for the first time since being under investigation by the AFL. Also, Magpie star Jordan De Goey back in Bali. Could Ross Lyon be set to make a shock return to Moorabbin? And Gay Waterhouse going for Caulfield Cup glory. Welcome back. North Melbourne coach Alistair Clarkson has left the country as the Roos seek to have Clarkson start within a fortnight. Mitch Cleary has the exclusive details, and Mitch, this is quicker than expected.
Well, Abby, Clarkson's start date was set to be deferred beyond November 1, but now the Roos are hopeful he can begin on that date, even with the pending AFL investigation into Hawthorn allegations. Clarkson departing for Scotland today. He'll spend a week learning off Celtic coach Ange Postecoglou alongside Brendan Bolton. The Hawks have offered to mediate with the families involved in the saga. Clarkson, though, awaiting the investigation terms of reference to be thrashed out.
Do you plan on being at North Melbourne on November 1, Alistair?
Well, I'm going to do a professional development trip overseas, and I'm just relying on the AFL to let us know what's going on with the investigation. As we said it along, Fags and Jason and myself are ready to defend ourselves at the earliest opportunity.
Roos President Sonia Hood telling 7 News, we're hopeful he'll start on November 1, subject to the terms of reference and his ability to participate in the process. We've seen a draft process, but we haven't got much line of sight over what the process is. And Jordan De Goey has returned to Bali for off-season training 4 months after his controversial mid-season visit. He's teamed up with Melbourne coach Simon Goodwin for sessions with local Aussie rules side, the Bali Geckos. Abby?
Thank you, Mitch. St Kilda will be the 4th club this year who will replace their coach following Brett Ratton's shock axing. Our chief footy reporter Tom Brown has all the new details tonight. And Tom, Ross Lyon could be back at Moorabbin.
Abby, my sources indicate tonight Ross Lyon and St Kilda is on. Now, just to emphasise, there is a bit to play out here. St Kilda insisting today they haven't signed anyone or spoken to the candidates as yet. Lyon isn't ruling out interest today, prepared at least to take St Kilda's call. He also clearly fits the bill, a 60% plus winning record. He's ruthless, and but for the bounce of that ball, Collingwood fans, don't look, he would have delivered St Kilda that flag they so desperately crave. There's other candidates, of course. The Bulldogs adamant today Beveridge isn't going anywhere, but St Kilda could move on Lyon as soon as late next week, I'm told. The review identifying troubling feedback on whether St Kilda is on track for a flag.
Are we genuinely on the path to contending, or are we kidding ourselves? Are we at serious risk of getting stuck into the 6 to 10 zone? All sorts of questions related to that. And the answers I got were troubling.
Abby, meantime, we'll learn the changes from Essendon's football review as soon as next week. And just finally, Sam Mitchell has written to the Hawthorn members this afternoon defending their trade period. He insisted he is interested in finals. They're concentrating on taking the steps to win flags. Abby?
Thank you, Tom. Roy Lobb says his meeting with Dogs coach Luke Beveridge was love at first sight. The new recruit is making no secret he's come over to win a premiership, but is still getting used to his new colours.
Perfect. Couple more.
I like the navy, nice. What colour would you say this is? Royal blue. Royal blue, there we go, yeah. I like the royal blue. I think we're chasing a premiership like every other club. Ever since the first meeting I had with Bevo, I felt like I had a really good connection with him. We feel like we're on the same page.
The 29-year-old will predominantly be a key forward, but says he'll also help relieve Tim English in the ruck. Victory coach Tony Popovich says we're yet to see the best of superstar Lewis Nani. The former Manchester United midfielder starred in the win over Sydney in his first A-League appearance.
As the year goes on, we expect to see a better Lewis Nani. He's had a good week this week. We can see there's a bit more sharpness about him at training.
Melbourne face the Western Sydney Wanderers tomorrow night at Amy Park. Gai Waterhouse says recent heavy rain won't be an issue at the Caulfield Cup. The champion trainer saddles up third favourite Knights Order, who also nominated the Melbourne Cup.
We see these puddles, wherever they are, he loves them. He really gets excited when there's a bit of rain about.
So does Gai. She had her last Caulfield Cup winner back in 2010 with Descardo, and this is what they're all going to be vying for, Mitch. It's a 20-horse field. If you have $180,000 worth, if you don't mind, there on the Cup. 9-carat gold. All goes to play tomorrow. And, of course, the 7 coverage will start at 11. The Everest racing as well. It's Christmas if you like horse racing.
There are some pretty ordinary trophies in world sport. This isn't one of them. It's beautiful, isn't it?
They won't miss it if I take it home, right?
Yes, they will. You leave it right there or we'll get into trouble. Thank you very much indeed, Abby. Scientists have proven it's possible to spot signs of dementia as early as 9 years before diagnosis. Around 400,000 Australians are currently living with the condition.
Phil says it was his wife who first noticed.
I was just forgetting mundane things like where my wallet or my phone was.
Symptoms that developed over a couple of years.
I was forgetting people's names at the table. I wasn't confident with my driving.
Eventually diagnosed as dementia. But now a Cambridge University study says early signs of trouble in the brain could be detected up to 9 years before obvious symptoms.
And they found that certain tests predicted dementia.
Done on 500,000 people in Britain, they included tests of logic and reasoning with questions like this. Another that tested how quickly they could react to seeing 2 cards the same. People who developed Alzheimer's had made more errors.
If there are drugs that can stop the disease progressing, it could be nipped in the bud.
500,000 Australians live with dementia, a number set to double by the 2050s. Working with Dementia Australia, Phil says being organised is key, helped by assistance dog Sarah.
She finds things around the house for me, like keys, wallet. It's security, but confidence that, I can still do all this travel that I do.
Paul Caddack, 7 News.
Jane Bunn is next with the forecast. And Jane, how is it looking this weekend?
Well, Mitch, it is dry all the way through the day on Saturday. Then showers redevelop like we saw today. The full details are next.
On Weekend Sunrise, Victoria's weather emergency. Every new alert as it happens, keeping you up to the minute. Plus our finance and tech experts on the best apps to protect your cash and all of those passwords. And Sarah De Lorenzo's family menus, saving food and your money. Saturday, 7 a.m.
Hello again. If you're after sunshine, you're in luck. We'll have a bit of that tomorrow morning and again early next week. But there's also another big rain system on the horizon. These are set to continue each week for the rest of the year. The only difference each time is which areas are in the path of the rain. As the heavy rain cleared Melbourne overnight, so did the high humidity. That meant the temperature could plummet. Our low was 10 and then it reached a top of 18. Showers pass through mainly this afternoon. Hit and miss start and stop, so there's a downpour, but it's quick and moves on. We're seeing 3 to 5 millimetres at best, not the 40 to 70 millimetres of the past 2 days. The Maribyrnong River remains in major flood. That's the red one. The Yarra, Werribee and Barwon are in moderate to yellow. In moderate in yellow, the rest are in minor. The heavy rain band tracked through eastern Victoria overnight and was all over by dawn. In behind that, we have showers passing through. Local thunderstorms over Gippsland. Now, they don't bring torrential rain, but they can actually drop wintry hail. It's cold enough for snow in the Alps. At last count, the Avoca, Broken, Campaspe, Goulburn, Loddon, Murray, Ovens and King, Severn and Castle Creeks, Wimmera and Mount Emu Creek are all in major flood. All the rain was thanks to a front that was driven by a cut-off low, and that was all fed by tropical moisture. That is now moving away to our east out there. In behind it, we have high pressure, making further troughs of instability fall southwards. Today's showers clear eastwards tonight. Tomorrow is generally dry. Then a weak trough brings showers later on Saturday, continuing into Sunday. There is a dry break on Monday and Tuesday. Warmer sunshine returns. Then rain comes down across Victoria's north on Wednesday and Thursday, only grazing the south. Now, at the moment, it looks like the heaviest falls will be in New South Wales and Queensland, not here. Around the nation tomorrow is sunshine in Brisbane, Sydney, Canberra and Perth. Showers across Hobart during the afternoon, and Adelaide looks dry. To Victoria, early fog patches about the north, showers at the southwest coast and up on the ranges. The rest of the state looks quite dry before those showers spread a bit further into the south at night. So closer in, enjoy the sunshine tomorrow morning. Cloud builds during the afternoon, but most look dry all day. Showers are most likely at night with that trough. So there is sunshine during the morning tomorrow, then cloud builds in the afternoon. The city is heading for 18. There's the chance of showers at night. On the 8-day outlook, those showers do continue during the day. On Sunday, a top of 17. It should be dry, all dry by the evening. On Monday, 18, a trough passer to the south. Then we have our warmer weather. Bright sunshine Tuesday and Wednesday. Then some showers and storms, some tropical activity as we go into later next week. 18 tomorrow, dry all day, sunshine at first. The chance of showers by the evening, Mitch.
What an incredible week it has been.
It has most certainly been. It's good that that rain has now cleared out to the east.
Yeah, my word. Thank you very much indeed, Jane. And that's the way it is this Friday, the 14th of October. Thanks for your company. For now, from the 7 News team, good night.